interesting. It always comes up. It's never the same thing, but I can usually put it into two kind of buckets for when we want to have our content relating to other external data. It could be other content from other systems. It could be anything. So there's two kinds of ways to look at this. One is, do we want to link to that other content? So does that other content have something like an ID in there that we can put into the main sort of content model and then link off to that? A really great example of that is e-commerce. So if we're using something like Shopify or BigCommerce in a headless way, I could put a product ID inside of a blog post, for instance, and now that is the featured product on that blog post, right? So I don't have to store the entire product, just the ID, and then wherever that gets used, wherever it gets output into a front end or something like that, now an API call can be made to get the rest of that product information live at that moment. So if the product information changes, that's okay, because we're just using the ID to relate it over to the content in the content platform. So that's the linking model. And that's a really, the idea is, does your content exist in a way that you actually do want to use it on your front end already? So you can associate it. So you don't need to remoderate that content. If you do need to remoderate that content, so if it exists in another system that, maybe it's not in the nicest format, or maybe that system's hidden behind a firewall that can't be, we don't want to get to that. We want to sync that in. So we can do link or we can sync. And so by syncing, sometimes it's a one-time sync, and that's oftentimes a one-time import. So we've got something in an old system or something that's not as accessible as we need to when we need to run some process, or maybe it's even a one-time import to pull that content into the content platform so that we can moderate it, we can take it through all of the workflow stuff that we've set up. And now that content needs to adhere to whatever model that we've set up as well. So sometimes you have something in an external system, you want to sync that in. And it could be things like we've had customers do product data. So they have like a product information management system that they pull stuff into, and now we remoderate that, maybe add or associate it with some stuff that's part of the content model, like segment it, things like that. And then now that can be approved and published as part of the regular content workflow. So we can link with it, we can sync with it. I think those are the two. Any other additions to that, or you can think of, John?
I can't think of any, but I will lean on the fact that linking is generally the preferred direction. And because the reason for that is that you're not duplicating content or having multiple versions of content in different areas, and you have a single point of truth. So the linking really helps. And also, a lot of platforms and systems are coming out nowadays to support with this linking. So orchestration platforms, platforms that are deploying out to, Jamstack solutions. There's all these frameworks and things that are, able to take these IDs and also bring in the APIs and the feeds from other systems and bind them together. So as you code, you're not kind of doing multiple calls. You're kind of able to call almost a single layer and kind of get all this information. So that just kind of reinforces the direction of, linking is the best approach. Obviously, that depends if all of the systems that you're linking together are more modern, more headless, more API first, and the syncing kind of fills in the back if you're working with legacy systems perhaps, or platforms that just don't work well to be orchestrated together. Mm-hmm. So we've been doing linked content. I don't think we even call it linked content in Gilly some places. I don't know if it's content relationships or linked content now, but we've been doing linked content for a long time, and it's been very powerful, and it's really never let us down in terms of how it can pull in that external content and relate it.
It's a good point. Just one more thing about syncing. Syncing does rely on you having some kind of, I wondered how long we'd go before we said composable and orchestration in this session. But definitely you need to have some sort of orchestration to pull that content in as part of the sync. And sometimes you want to push it automatically to another place. We haven't talked about outputs yet, but certainly there is an idea there as we're going to sync it into your content platform. The idea is it's probably going to sync somewhere else as well. You need to maintain that structure. Mm-hmm. Whereas with linking, we're going to rely on that other system and its API to get that content and data. Okay.
100%. Yeah.